All right. So, welcome to episode one of the Daily Addict Podcast. I'm here with Emma Sornson, longtime friend, gal in recovery. She's out there killing it. Um, Start by kind of sharing what brought you here. I know you were from, what was it, Salem
Mhm.
before? Um, but yeah, share what brought you to Portland and kind of what you've been up to and where you've been.
For me, when I was really young, I got bullied like really, really, really bad. I was a woman at the time, girl, who grew up really fast,
Hmm.
and that was easy for people to pick on. So I remember dealing with mental illness like when I was really, really young. But when I was 15, like I just really wanted to fit in. Like I
Yeah.
really, really, really wanted to fit in,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I started smoking weed like pretty early on,
Isn't
and then got caught.
that how, what's funny is like, when you talk about high school and weed and all that stuff, I don't know if you had the DARE program down there, but they
Yes.
always were like, weed's a gateway drug, and everybody's like, dude, it's a plant, right? Because I think I started smoking weed when I was like 14, 15 years old,
Yeah.
and then right around the same time I started drinking, honestly, and so yeah, it's just funny. So go ahead,
Yeah.
continue.
But besides, like, fitting in, I was smoking it to kind of, like, escape because at that point, like, I say that my parents kind of went through 2 divorces.
Okay,
They, like, separated for the first time when I was 11,
okay,
and it was, like, tumultuous, like, fighting, all this sort of stuff.
hmm,
My dad had been unfaithful, and
okay.
I, at 11 years old, was the one to find out and tell my
Oh,
mother. And, like, I don't fault my parents for anything that happened in my
mhm.
childhood anymore. I was very angry for a very long time,
Yeah.
because there's 3 of us. I have 2 younger sisters, and they're my life.
So let me ask you this. Were you angry at your dad specifically, or were you angry at the situation? I mean, at 11 years old, you may
Yeah.
not have an answer for it, but I'm just curious because I kind of sit back and I try to think of like what my feelings would be behind it, right? So
Mhm.
I'm just curious. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's a good question because I was very angry at my dad,
Okay.
like, very angry, and especially seeing how my mom react to it. Like, I became an 11-year-old, big sister, athlete, student, all this sort of stuff to now being, like, my mom's therapist. And,
Mm,
I think that it made me mature a lot faster. Again, I'll never fault my mom for that. I think
yeah.
that she was trying to cope in the best way that she could because
Yeah.
it was really bad and all happened, like, at once. Like, the, affair happened, and then my mom lost her job, and then the weekend that she lost her job, my dad asked for a divorce, and it
So
was
it was just a domino effect of
oh, yeah.
everything happening. And it's so curious to me that when you think about life events and big life events,
Mhm.
that's not an uncommon way of people explaining things, right? It's
Yeah.
like the domino effect of things happening. One event, all of a sudden, it just unleashes a chain reaction of like, well, this is what needs to happen, right? And so, uh, and being at 11 years old and you're dealing with the divorce, and then obviously the job getting, your mom losing her job is a big effect, and then the affair, like you're trying to filter all this as an 11-year-old.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
I yeah, I can't relate on that realm as far as the divorce goes, but I can definitely relate to the like mental health and the burden of other people and adults' lives, right? Being young and feeling like all that weight sits on your shoulder at 11 years old.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's incredible. So,
Oh, yeah. My parents, coped with a lot of things that happened in our lives by drinking,
mm,
so I learned that very early, and then it was
mhm,
like boom, boom, boom from my mom. A big thing about my recovery is, like, letting go of anger and, like, realizing
mhm.
that anger is a secondary emotion, and, like, at the time, I was experiencing, like, rejection, I felt abandoned, like, all of that sort of stuff, so that's what my anger is, like, rooted in, and, uh, and then so they got back together, like, shortly after that, I wanna say about, like, maybe 9 months after that,
Okay.
and then we went on this big family vacation, and it was like, "Whoa, like, what is going on right now?"
Right.
Like
What's happening?
yeah,
Yeah.
I had just experienced this, like, massive separation, and then we go houseboating in Canada with, like, a bunch of our family friends. It didn't last much longer after that, so, like, my dad moved in, we went on vacation, and then, a couple years went by,
Mhm.
and they separated again when I was in 7th grade. So I was about 13 at the time, and it was just
So it was a
all
true,
bad.
like, double divorce,
Yeah.
right? You witnessed them going through this tumultuous painful divorce, separation of the affair, your mom lost her job, like all these things, right? And then a little bit later, they're like, "Oh, we're gonna try again."
Mhm.
A couple years go by, and then was the second one just as bad as the first one, or
Oh
was
my
it a
god,
little
yeah.
bit more? Oh, really?
Oh, no, it was bad, it was
Okay.
bad. I think that it had just gotten to the point where my parents, like, couldn't love each other the same way
Yeah.
anymore, and, like, that's okay, but you have 3 kids
Right.
that are pretty young going through this, and, uh, my mom had me when she was 23, so, like, she says that, like, she grew up with me, so I think a lot of her actions were her just still learning in life.
Still figuring out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Because I, like, at 23, I couldn't imagine having a kid, and I'm still growing up too and all this.
Well, yeah, you're preaching to the choir on that one. My daughter, she's 8, and I had her at 19.
Yeah.
So 19, 20. Um, and it's very true, right? My first wife and she was 21, I was 20. Uh, and it's 100% true. I'm learning. So your mom saying like she grew up with you, like that's something I can relate to because that's 100% true. Like I'm growing up with my daughter because we're all learning, right?
But, yeah, it's like it made me sad because that was a statement that was told to me when I was, like, pretty young, but I
Mhm.
didn't have the capacity to, like, truly understand it because I was just so angry that, like, my mom wasn't as present as I needed her to be. I mean, same with my dad, like, I'm a big daddy's girl. I'm,
Mhm.
like, the spitting image of my father. Um,
Gotcha.
and I just not having, like, the complete support of both of them because they
Mhm.
were going through their own stuff, like, hurt me so bad, and then I have these 2 younger sisters that I feel like I need to take care of and, like,
Mhm.
shield them from what's going on and all this sort of stuff, and, so by the time that I was, like, 15, had gone through all of this, um, I needed to fit in and I wanted to escape.
Yeah.
I wanted to escape so bad, and that the first stint that I had smoking weed, I got caught pretty quickly.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. 'Cause, people in West Salem love to talk, especially when it's, like, gossiping about other families, and so
Yeah.
there's, like, one friend of mine who I thought was a friend decided to tell her dad, who, like, ripped my dad to shreds, if I'm remembering correctly, and I remember coming home, my parents were separated, coming home, and my dad being like, "You need to take this, like, home drug test."
Oh, shit, you
Oh,
got the
yeah.
home drug test.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
That's
yeah.
brutal.
Oh, yeah, my dad worked in occupational medicine at the time,
Okay.
so he got, like, not just the cheap, like, store,
Right.
like, drug test, he had the
Like,
full thing.
yeah.
Oh, yeah, and I knew at that moment I was so fucked.
And
Um,
you're too young to figure out how to fake a drug test.
oh, yeah. Oh, yeah,
You know what I mean?
I had no idea, and there were so many things that were kind of weighing on this because I was playing sports at the time, like, I
Mhm.
had discovered volleyball and that I was good at volleyball, and, like, friends and all this sort of stuff, and then I knew from being caught all of that, or at least most of it was gonna be taken away.
Getting the sports taken away,
Mhm.
right, is like when I was growing up, I would say probably from, like but I know there was a stint where, like, that was threatened by me, by my mother, right, of, like, "You're gonna get" because I was a baseball player, actually,
Yeah.
growing up. Um, I didn't find wrestling until a little bit later in my life, but so she's like, "Oh, we're gonna, you got in trouble, we're gonna take baseball."
Mhm.
Well, looking back on it, right, now that I'm an adult, looking back at that time and also, like, what sports meant to me,
Mhm.
I 100% believe that a part of my addiction was losing that sport.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
wrestling for me in high school was, like, bar none. I
Mhm.
mean, I still do it to this day.
Yeah.
And so, like, that was bar none, like, my place, right?
Mhm.
Like, where I fit in, where I could just escape. I tell my kids in the mat room, and it's still to that same way. Like, I
Mhm.
still use it the exact same way I did in high school on a
Mhm.
different capacity.
Yeah.
And so I tell my kids, when you walk into this room, this is your time, this is your chance for 2 hours at a day to not worry about a single other thing going on in the world,
Absolutely.
right? And so I think about the punishment of taking away that thing, right? I think about it with my own daughters. Like,
Mhm.
would this be something that I would do? And I don't think that would be the case, in my opinion,
Oh, yeah.
right? Just because I know like what impact that it would have had on me.
Mhm.
If my parents came to me and were like, "You're not wrestling anymore," I probably would have flipped the lid.
Oh, yeah.
And They never did that. There was plenty of times where they could have used that as a punishment, trust me. My dad could vouch for me, love you, dad. So your parents, you were worried that that was gonna be one of your punishments, right?
Oh,
Was
yeah.
getting that take did it end up being one of the punishments?
No, thank God.
Okay, good.
But I was, like, on lockdown from friends at that point. Um, and I
Which is
had
in high school, it's like being in solitary confinement.
and at that point, I felt so lonely.
Right.
And so the thing I turned to after that was boys.
Mm.
And, my mom is a big codependent person,
Mhm.
and so I watched her, like, how she treated my dad, now my stepdad, and all this sort of stuff, and, like, because I felt so lonely and, like, had a massive fear of rejection and abandonment, I found it in boys.
Mm.
And the sad thing about this is, like, I, um, learned very early on that my body can be used for, like, a lot of different things. I was sexually molested by, a girl at daycare when I was, like, 6, 7, or 8 or something like that.
Mhm.
It made me really sad because I remember looking back at her and, like, her parents and who they were, and everyone knew, like, that her parents were also troublesome. And
Okay.
so I look back on it now and I'm like, "She did that to me because that was happening to her."
The fact that you can look at that and the statement you just said, I mean, seriously, like, gives me goosebumps because it's like, you are a victim in your own right, right?
Mhm.
You could feel and process and do whatever you can, and however the fuck you wanna feel it,
Mhm.
right? But you can look back and you can be like, "I'm heartbroken for so and so
Yeah,
because I know that that is the process of what she was doing."
exactly.
Let me let me ask you a question.
Okay.
Would you have ever been able to do that? Look back and say that statement that you just said to me if it wasn't for recovery,
Absolutely not.
the
Like,
work you do in recovery?
absolutely not. That I was at treatment where you and I were at treatment,
Mhm.
and my counselor at the time had, like, pulled it out of me, and it just, like, I have a lot of aha moments
Right,
in recovery, just, like, many aha moments, and so that was, like, one of them of being like, behavior is learned,
right.
and especially, like, that sort of behavior coming from such a young person, like, that was learned somewhere, so, like, she deserves grace because she was suffering too.
But you have the grace enough to be like, "But what did she have to go through?" You know
Exactly.
what I mean? What did she have to deal with every day? Which is, I mean, yeah, it's just incredible.
Yeah, exactly.
Incredible gift of recovery, right? I mean, it just gives you, because that's what it gives you, right? Is
Mhm.
it gives you that grace of, like, being able to look at a situation, understand where your faults or where your burdens are coming from, but also understand and look at other people and be able to have a grace and be able to look at somebody without judgment, without fear of, like, man, I just gotta give you mad props on that because that's huge. That is huge.
I do appreciate that. What I like to do before is, like, play the victim to everything, which prevented me from connecting to others by putting myself in their shoes. And
Mhm.
it was, like, an interesting dichotomy that I had where I, like, took on people's emotions,
Yeah.
but then I refused to actually put myself in their shoes. And so it was, like, confusing for a very long time, but, like, I will always put myself in her shoes now. Um, but because of, like, that situation is, like, when the 15-year-old came, 15-year-old me came, and I was, like, my like, women's bodies are meant for, like, this thing,
Right.
and, um, my best friend's brother popped into the picture who was 19 at the time. It just I kind of count that as one of the moments where the snowball started going, but
Mhm.
it wasn't going down, like, fast, it was just starting, and, uh, he was, like, someone that would provide alcohol to parties. We were throwing parties constantly. When my parents kinda let up on whatever with
Right.
me,
Right.
one of our friends' moms would, like, constantly go on away trips for work, and so we were throwing party after party, and he would supply all the alcohol, and we would all drink ourselves to sleep at night, 15, 16-year-olds with a 19, 20-year-old, and the parties got so freaking crazy, and then at the time, I'm, like, trying to maintain sports, but I have an injury to my shoulder. Okay, I know I can't play my favorite sport now,
Right.
so I'm going to stick with boys and, start smoking weed again. And I got into a physically abusive relationship that lasted only 3 months, but man, in that 3 months, he beat the shit out of me.
In high school?
In high school.
Oh my
Oh,
gosh.
yeah.
Yeah, that's
And yeah, and, I try to talk to my mom about the situation a lot because there had come a point where this guy was, like, pinching me, so hard that it was, like, separating the skin from the fat on me and, like, leaving these giant marks, and, like, I knew I was in a bad situation.
Right.
I was hopping from relationship to relationship. I had not experienced this before. This man had a lot of anger, like, and he was taking it out on me. Like, we used to wrestle, and he'd hold me in arm bars until my arms started cracking, and like hold me in headlocks and all this sort of shit. And there was one time he pinched me so hard that
Mhm.
it left this like massive bruise on my chest. And I remember going to my mom, being like, "I have no idea what to do. I have no idea what to do."
How
And
could you? I mean, you were in high school. How
yeah,
could you know? I mean, yeah, and was this guy also in high school?
yep, he was a year older than me. Um, and I don't like, again, I will never fault him for any of that sort of stuff. Like, he, at least now, I don't know what his situation was then, because he wasn't someone that would talk a lot. And
Right.
I rushed into the relationship because I didn't want to be by myself,
Yeah.
and I felt like I had just lost my first love. And like in movies, they portrayed domestic violence, and so I was like, I'd never get into this like one myself. And then here I
Right.
am,
Right.
and
In
he,
this situation
yeah,
with yeah. No, I
it
yeah.
was wild.
Yeah.
Like 3 months, we were together for only 3 months, and I had come to my mom with this like massive bruise on my chest, and like I tell my mom this now, and she has since apologized and profusely. But like I told her about it, and I showed her, and she told me she didn't want to know about my sex life, and I'm like, that's not it. Like I need help. Like I need help.
Right. Right.
Um, and again, like I just realized that my mom didn't know what to do in that time because she was dealing with stuff herself. I don't
Yeah.
think that she expected any of her daughters to be in anything like that, so I don't fault her at all. But luckily, he broke up with me before anything bad happened. Like he like
So
moved.
he's the one that separated.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, and I felt like that was a gift from God.
Yeah.
Because there's no way that I would have gotten out of the relationship. Like I even fought for him to stay, like all this sort of stuff. I'm like, holy shit, I'm here. I'm in this cycle.
Yeah, and it's wild being so young, right? Of like having to go through something like that. And then, my dad always told me one of my downfalls in high school was I found women and alcohol.
Mm,
And at the time I was like, yeah, whatever, dad. Like, I'm
yeah,
still a good wrestler. It is what it is, right?
yeah,
Um, but looking back on it, like that's kind of the truth, right?
yeah.
Like alcohol was a big part of my high school. I'd go to parties and I was always known for being the first one to black out,
I understand
first one to
that. Yeah,
pass out and oh, Collie's at it again, you know what I mean? But I was young, I was
yeah,
like, well, this is what we're supposed to do, right?
exactly.
Um, but the girls side of things, I can relate to you so much on the women aspect
Mhm,
of it, right? And I don't know, I haven't done enough work in my life to know where that is rooted from,
mhm,
but I can relate on the fact of like not being alone and seeking the validation from women
mhm.
at the time, girls, right? Like
Yeah,
we're 15, 16,
yeah,
I lost my virginity when I was 14. Like, um, and so, but seeking that validation and hopping from girl to girl to girl
mhm,
to girl, and not always, very rarely was it their fault that I would leave, but I would be like, this is such a messed up mindset that I
mhm.
have. And looking back, like this is the mindset I had. Of like, well, I'm kind of bored. I'm kind of,
Yeah,
like I'm gonna go do something else, and that meant I'm gonna break up with you, and I'm gonna go find somebody else, right?
yeah,
And to be honest, like that, I've done a lot of work, obviously, in recovery and in my life to not be that way anymore. But like they talk about old patterns and behaviors and stuff like that of like certain situations, and it has happened to me in my adult life. Of like I start getting this thinking of like you're looking for all the problems,
mhm.
right, in the relationship, you're searching them out,
Oh, yeah,
even if they're
absolutely.
not there,
I
or
know.
even if there's something that you is not as big a deal as it is, but you're
Mhm,
searching for it. So,
yeah.
obviously, all of a sudden, it's this huge process, like, "Well, you did this," and it's like, "Yeah, I've been doing this for, like, the last 6 months. Where have you been?" You know what I mean? Why is it a big deal now?
Yes.
Um, but it's just so crazy to me, and I think in my journey, right, I think that's a lot like, that was my first addiction,
Mm,
was the women, was the validation, was the
100%.
codependency
Yeah.
of, like and it wasn't just from them, right? Like, it wasn't just from the women that I was with and being with and doing all the things with, right? It was also from my friend group, you know what I
Mhm.
mean? Because you walk up to high school boys and
Mhm.
you're like, "Yeah, I just, blah, blah, blah." And they're like, "Yeah, dude, hell yeah." And
Yeah.
so that validation too, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? And I really honestly think like that was the first sign. Because again, I was a binge drinker in high school. As soon as I started, there was no stopping me. So
Exactly.
it's like, I know that was an issue, right?
Mhm.
A1. But like the long term, like the maintenance side of my addiction, like what's fueled and what kind of scratched that itch for me
Mhm.
was the women, was
Mhm.
the validation from women. And so I can relate to you.
Oh, yeah.
My therapist, he was he was talking to me one time and he's like, "Why do you think you?" Because I wrote out like all the relationships I'd been in, even in my early like adult life, right?
Mhm.
He's like, "Why do you think you're like that?" And I was like, "I don't know, dude. Like, you're supposed to tell me." And he's like,
Yeah.
"No, I want you to sit back and I want you to think about like, why do you think you're seeking that validation over and over again?" And still to this day, because progress, not perfection, right? Like, still
Exactly.
to this day, like, I don't know. Like, I
Mhm.
really don't know why I was like, why
Yeah.
I'm like that. I won't even say like I was like that.
Mhm.
Like, why I'm like that. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I mean, I'm in a committed relationship now and we're happy and, healthy and stuff. And there's none of that feeling, right? But there's still that thought in my brain, if that makes
Oh,
sense.
yeah.
Like, there's not an action behind it. There's nothing happening behind it, right?
Mhm.
But there's still that thought in my brain. Like, I constantly seek that validation.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, it's just crazy to me, and I don't know. It's crazy that even though we're so different, right? Like, we've obviously taken different paths out of rehab, out of high school, um, but, like, you search for the similarities in stories,
Exactly.
and you can see like, I can see and hear the similarities between you and I being friends, from rehab, so not even knowing each other previous to that.
Yeah.
So it's funny to me. So
I mean, I would agree with you. You know, I think that we also have to, like, recognize that we're imperfectly perfect,
mhm,
um, or perfectly imperfect, whatever way you wanna think of that, and,
mhm.
like, we'll always have those thoughts in our head, but it's the fact that we don't act on them because that's, like, the biggest thing. We're addicts, we come with impulse, right? I'm gonna make a decision without thinking about it once.
Yeah.
Once, and so, like, recognizing that the thoughts that we still have are okay, it's the fact that we're not acting on them. And
Yeah.
that's what I've learned to give myself a lot of grace because I still have sneaking thinking like that a
Yeah.
lot. Like, I'm like, "Oh, I need validation from somewhere." And I've slowly learned how to validate myself or just accept the fact that I'm not going to get that, which
Right.
is really, really hard. It was
Mm.
really hard, and I've worked so much over the last 3.5 years to be able to do that, but I think it's natural for us to want that. Like, I mean, for a multitude of reasons, like, we have social media that
Right.
is, like, forcing us to get some sort of validation or, like, the more likes we get, the more comments and all that sort of stuff, so I think it's normal for people, like, our age and younger to have that thought process.
Well, and, like, the instant gratification,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
if somebody tells me I look good or I'm pretty or
Mhm.
I'm handsome or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Like, that feels good.
Oh,
You know what I
yeah.
mean? Like, that is like, yeah,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
And I don't think that aspect of it's wrong, right? Because I think if you look at even a normie and then you're like, "Hey, you look pretty good today," they're still gonna get that feeling, right?
Mhm.
But with our addict mindset and wanting that instant gratification, I think like I said, I really do think that was the first part of my addiction,
Oh,
was
yeah.
seeking that validation, that quick dopamine hit of like, "Yeah, I do look good. And yeah, I can talk to so and so and be with so and so,"
Mhm.
right? So, anyway, yes. So, going back to so you were in this relationship, he walked away.
Oh, yeah, and then, I mean, this is, like, a part of it too of, like,
Mhm.
uh, I think that I started getting noticed in high school a little bit more because I was, like, finding myself and, like, dressing the way I wanted to dress and being a
Mhm.
little bit more outgoing while also smoking weed and drinking on top of it,
Mhm.
and there was someone that had caught my eye after, many attempts to get my attention. I was too focused on everyone else and getting everyone else's attention, and then he popped in and this ended up being my high school sweetheart, but, like, our story just made my addiction go, like, far worse. Like,
Yeah.
he was in a relationship at that time, and, it was a friendship at first, and then quickly turned sexual, and I thought I was living on cloud 9 being the other woman of this like high school relationship. In an instant, everyone knew my business. Everyone. And it was like, as a society, we look at not the men that's making the mistake, no offense to you or anything,
Mhm.
but we look at the woman who's the other woman. It's like, well, you knew this. Why didn't you do better? And it's like, this guy was in a relationship. I wasn't. Looking back on it now, I totally should have made a better decision, but I was like really riding this high of like, oh, I can take your man. And that I think that was just like this so like such insecure like little girl in me that was just feeling so accomplished that this guy had like bypassed his girlfriend to go be with me and it was a secret, so I was thriving on like secrecy of it. And
So do you think, and this might be a hard question to answer, right?
Mhm.
Do you think a part of that feeling was because of what you went through with your parents? Of like your mom seeing your dad
Mhm.
and your mom going through this rough patch of the affair and having another woman on the side, right? Do you
Mhm.
think, and again, this is 100% just a speculation at best, right?
Yeah.
But if you, in my brain, like those dots connect for me
Yeah.
of like, do you think you felt so high, like on cloud nine and so, um, I guess validated would be the word I would use,
Yeah.
right? Because of what you went through with your parents?
I think yes and no. When I look back at the situation, I'm like, I was the other woman that I hated so much that my like dad tore apart this family, and like of course like it's different circumstances,
Right, right,
married man with kids, and then like high school boyfriend girlfriend
right,
relationship and all of
right.
that. But like I was just riding this high because I think that I just felt accomplished,
Mhm.
and the relationship ended up tearing me apart, like absolutely tearing me
Really?
apart. I felt like I was finally finding myself, and then it just disappeared. All of it disappeared because he was such a codependent, insecure man. And
Mhm.
so it was like if I didn't answer his texts all day, every single day, even when I'm at work, or because I was coaching volleyball at the time for like
Mhm.
preschoolers, and then like rumors started going around school that he like did something with another woman. Like, my response to that second cheating allegation was to go party. Like I was gonna go party hard. Like he had his medical card for like health issues, so I was already like smoking up all day every day with him. And then, like, that happened, and I was like, "This is another betrayal, like, this
Yeah.
of the closest person that's to me." And so I called up one of my friends, and I was like, "You wanna go to Corvallis and, like, go party?" Because in Salem, we know Corvallis as Corvegas, which is,
Yeah.
like, the high school parties,
Yep.
and then we know Eugene as the Dirty Huge, which are the good college parties. So you have to start out in Corvallis, then move up to Eugene when you're in college.
Okay.
And that's how we thought of it. And so I'm like, "You wanna go to Corvallis? Let's go party." He's like, "Hell yeah, I'll pick you up right now." And we went and partied hard in Corvallis. Like he drove home drunk and all of this. And I felt like that was like I was already partying before, but I had taken a break because he wasn't my partner at the time wasn't super into partying. And
Okay.
but he would like smoke all day every single day. Um, and then I was like, nope, well, we're gonna ride this. Let's keep partying.
Right.
Oh, it's just so crazy. And I mean, uh, I went to U of O. I lived in the dorms. I got into a sorority really quick because my mom was a Chi Omega, um, and I didn't end up going to that sorority. I did Sigma Kappa, and I loved my experience there. Definitely expensive to be in Greek life, but like the
Right.
stereotype of partying and frats and all that reigns so true. And uh, he broke up with me. My high school sweetheart. We were engaged at the time. He broke up with me via Snapchat. My first day of winter term.
Via Snapchat?
Yep.
Oh
Oh
my
yeah.
god. I
Eh,
mean, I don't have any room to talk because I've done not Snap. I've never done Snapchat, right? They could
mhm.
always look back at the messages I send, but I
Yeah.
have done it over text message. But via Snapchat,
Via
huh?
Snapchat. Yeah. And walking to my very first class, first day of winter term, I get all these Snapchat messages, and I like open them, and he's like, "I'm sorry, I can't do this." Like, what the fuck? You what the fuck? You couldn't call me, and so then I get a
Or at
call.
least send a text, like
Yeah.
Snapchat of all things. Like,
Well, so this was his excuse. He calls me right after that. He's like, "I my calls weren't going through, and my texts weren't going through, so I just Snapchatted you." Oh my lord, are you kidding?
you couldn't
Like,
wait 30 minutes to get your service back up just
yeah,
so you know what I mean?
yeah,
Like I said, I don't have any room to talk when it comes to that sort of thing because I have done pretty shitty things with women as far as breaking up with him via text message.
Yeah.
But Snapchat?
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Like,
yeah.
I get mad at my stepmom for Snapchatting me instead of texting me, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
text me, you know?
Oh, yeah. No, it was awful, and, like, we had just gone on a vacation with his family where he proposed, like, literally less than a month before this.
Oh my, that makes it even worse.
Yeah, like,
Yeah.
and my entire life was him because of codependency and all of that sort of stuff, so, as soon as he broke up with me, I literally didn't show up to any of my, classes for the first day and went and drank, because I'm like, "I cannot handle this, like, what am I supposed to do without him in my life?" So,
Right. Was he going to Western at the time?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and he's a year ahead of me, so he was a sophomore when I was a freshman, and,
Okay.
uh, yeah, Western's about, like, an hour, hour and a half away from Eugene, so, like, there was a little bit of a distance, and that was the reason that he gave me, and, like, I'm like, "Bitch, if I was only an hour away from you, I was
Right.
gonna be there as much as possible." Like, I didn't have a car at the time because it's hard to have a car when you're on campus, and I was in the dorms and all of that, but that, like, catapulted me into, like, another deep, dark depression. I had decided to move out of the dorms because, of a bunch of different reasons. I moved into my sorority house, and then I was, like, so isolated in my sorority house and then clung on to these, like, juniors and seniors who, like, guided me, but, like, when you
There
when
you
you have, like, older people in your life
Uh-huh.
that are over 21, you get to do a bunch of things, and
Right. Right.
Eugene has some fun bars, and there was, like, a bar that would have, like, specials on Thursday that we would go to, and I would just, like, sneak in through the back gate
Mhm.
and then be with all of them, and it was bad, and then before I know it, I'm bringing a hydro flask full of vodka to campus, and in sorority houses, you can't have any paraphernalia, but, like, I had a dab pen, I had flour, I had Four Locos and bottles of vodka in
Right.
my thing, and, I was intoxicated all the time, like, all the time. There wasn't a time where I wasn't. And then I remember my grandma getting, like, so upset with how things were going because I got on, academic probation after winter term. And so she made me go to, like, the health center on campus to go get mentally checked out, and that's when I was first diagnosed as an alcoholic
19?
at 19.
Like, just seeing the parties and just being present for some of the parties that happen there, it is a recipe
Oh, yeah.
for alcoholics, addicts, you know what I mean? Of, like, because it's everywhere. I
Yeah.
mean, they yes, in society, alcohol is everywhere, right? I can
Mhm.
walk down the street to a bar or a convenience store and grab booze.
Mhm.
But it's so socially, like, that's what you're supposed to do in
Yeah.
college. That's how you're supposed to live, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I know tons of people that went to college, were there for a year, year and a half, got into booze or drugs, and that's why they're not there anymore.
Yeah.
And so 19, you got diagnosed as an alcoholic.
Mhm.
Now,
Yeah.
was that because you were drinking every day, right?
Oh, yeah. All
Okay.
day, every day.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. I was, like, showing up to, my 8 a.m. labs with that hydro flask full of vodka and, like, barely whatever juice was left in my sorority house, and then I'd get to lab would be 50 minutes,
Mhm.
and then I'd have to go to a lecture for an hour and a half. By the time that I got to the lecture, I was already pretty tipsy. By the
Mhm.
time that that lecture ended, I was on the brink of blackout. And that was, like, an everyday thing, and then I'd go home and I'd eat really quick, put more vodka in my thing, and then go back. And at the time, I, like, got involved in competitive mock trial at U of O 'cause I
Okay.
wanted to be an attorney.
Right.
And so I knew that that was something that I had to do, like, was get involved in that way, because it was run through the law school. So, like, people in law school would be watching, like, me do this, and, uh, so I'm, like, in mock trial. It's sophomore year. We're at our local, like, competition, and I'm about to, like, I'm hungover as fuck. I partied the night before. Like, of course, as our coaches are like, "Please don't do that. Like, get some rest, read up on all your material, like, get
Right.
ready for tomorrow,"
Right.
because this was the first competition of the year. And I was like, "No, fuck this." Like, I would rather be partying. At the time, I had, like, become really good friends with, like, one of the smaller frats on campus, so, like, we were constantly partying. I was late to the tournament in the competition, and then, luckily, I wasn't the first one to go 'cause there's 2 rounds per day,
Okay.
and I was prosecution, so prosecution was going second round of that day. So I had, like, some time to gather myself. Went into the trial, did pretty good with all of my questioning, cross-examination, all that sort of stuff, and then I was going to deliver the closing statement. But we're in the law school on U of O campus. There's like University of Washington people there, like Washington State, Cal State, like all of that sort of stuff that are there, like local
Right.
ones, like
Right.
Willamette University too. And we go on recess so that everyone can gather for closing statements. And I remember going to the bathroom and like throwing up, being like, I am not feeling much better. The anxiety from what I just did is like getting to me. I'm so
Right.
hungover. And so this University of Washington competitor heard me in the bathroom and I came out and she goes, "You're hungover." And I said, "Yes." And she goes, "You need help." I'm like, what do you mean need help? Well, I have some of this. All you need to do is just snort it. So you put anything in front of me, I'm gonna take it.
Right.
I'm gonna take it.
Yeah, you're a yes user.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm gonna take it. And so she we went into the handicap stall and she put some out, just white powder down there, and she said, "Use the straw, just snort it." First time I've ever snorted anything. I went into that courtroom and did so good. It was like it snapped me out of being
And
hungover.
that immediate
Oh yeah.
validation we were talking about earlier
Yeah.
of like immediate gratification, not
Mhm.
validation,
Yeah.
gratification, right? Of you take this little bit of stuff, right? And next thing you know, it's you're gonna you're gonna do great.
Yeah.
And so I'm assuming that's the connection you made, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Immediately. I was like, "Holy shit, like I'm not gonna stop drinking." But here's this thing to help me like sober up to stay present in school because it
And
wasn't
I assume the thing we're talking about is cocaine, right?
yes,
Okay.
sorry, I should have clarified.
No,
Yes.
yeah, that's fine.
No, it was Coke. But like the thing that was worrying me the most about like not doing well in school is like I was going to be cut off from all resources if I didn't complete school and graduate. Like my family would have been gone. They're like my grandparents were paying for a part of my college at that time.
Okay.
Thank you, grandma and grandpa. But they had like such stipulations for me, and if I
Right.
wasn't following through, that was going to be all cut off. And I'm like, I'm a stubborn person. If I say I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. So I was going to complete school. And but now I'm like, oh, I have this like mystery powder that is gonna like bring me back to life when I'm down. And then I remember after that, I went to another party with like my frat guys, and I'm like, guys, I just took this powder today, and they like laughed their asses off at me. And I'm like, the only thing I've done at that point was marijuana and alcohol.
Right.
And they're like, yeah, Emma, that's cocaine. And I was like, oh fuck, I did cocaine, like freaking out about
Yeah.
it because I didn't want to do anything harder. And then they pull out a bag and they're like, "You want some more?" I'm like, "Yeah, off to the races,
Yeah.
off to the races.
And
Yeah,
it's
give me some."
you know what's funny is again we talk about the similarities in our story. And the first time I ever did it was kind of in a similar I wasn't doing a mock trial to become a lawyer, but I was super hungover. I was at a buddy's house. I was super hungover, and he wakes me up. I don't want to wake up. I'm fucking tossing and turning,
Yeah.
right? And mind you, I'm 16, I
Mhm.
think, at the time.
Okay.
Yeah, it was New Year's Eve, right? I'm actually at my girlfriend at the time's party or house,
Yeah.
right? And we all partied. Her parents didn't give a shit, so we were partying and doing all the things, right? Well, this buddy of mine comes up to me. He's like, "Brandon, we gotta get up. Brandon, we gotta get up." I was like, I'm not feeling it, right? And I only did it once in high school, and this is
Okay.
that one time,
Yeah.
right? But again, you take it, all of a sudden you feel better, and you're like, wow, right? So that one time kind of stuck with me of
Mhm.
like, wow,
Yeah.
this is pretty, you know what I mean?
You'll never forget it. Never forget it.
No, and it's again, I didn't get, I would say, addicted to it, right,
Mhm.
in high school. But when I saw it again as a adult or 18, 19 years old, I
Mhm.
was like, I know what that is, and I want some. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, because the other thing is too is being an alcoholic, your goal is to feel drunk, right? I
Mhm.
mean, that's kind of the point of alcohol.
Yeah.
But now you have this stuff, this magical powder, right? I.e., Coke, that you can take and all of a sudden you can drink
Yeah.
all day,
More and more.
all night.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, yeah, duh. And then, I mean, right, being a CADC, but it's interesting. I didn't find this out until I was in rehab, to be honest. But when you mix alcohol and Coke,
Mhm.
it's the only combination of substances that creates a different drug in your body.
Yep.
And your body actually gets addicted to that
Yep.
drug. And I can't remember, I can never pronounce the name of the drug, but cocaethanol is what it is, I think. Um, but learning that and then seeing, my drinking career and the
Mhm.
path that I was on, it's like, yeah, because when I was 19, 20, 21, 22, when I'd pick up a bottle or pick up a drink, right, which is daily,
Mhm.
like that would be where my first thought was.
Oh,
Whether I
yeah.
acted on it or not, like that would be my first thought. Like,
Absolutely.
I want some of this.
Every time.
Yeah.
Every
Because,
time.
and again, not that I acted on it all the time because I was like, no, I'm not going to do anything hard, right? But I definitely had that correlation when I
Mhm.
started using it more regularly. I was like, as soon as I picked up the bottle at 9 o'clock in the morning or 6 o'clock in the morning to start drinking, it was like, yeah, I want this. It's
Yep.
6 in the morning. And I'm
Yep.
like, what the? So,
Oh, yeah. Oh,
yeah.
yeah. I definitely was addicted to that feeling because it was, like, so euphoric. Like,
Yeah.
it is so euphoric.
Yeah.
Uh, I didn't do much coke after that. I had actually discovered Adderall, and that Adderall was cheaper and would last longer. So I
Mhm.
had, like, a friend who had, like, 30 milligram slow release Adderall, and I, like, took it and took, like, the hardest law midterm in my life, did, like, interviews for jobs, even, like, worked out a little bit, like, did everything in such a short amount of time. I was high and awake for 48 hours, so,
Well, yeah, and
like
again, goes back to like the social acceptance of things,
yeah.
right? If I looked at you as somebody that we didn't know, right, strangers, and I
Mhm.
was like, "Yeah, I do coke to stay awake," and they're gonna be like, "What,
Yeah.
dude? Are you kidding me right now?"
Yeah.
But if you're like, "Oh, I'm taking Adderall," they'll be like, "Oh, all right,
Yeah, exactly.
cool." Like,
Exactly. And I'm like, Adderall is an amphetamine. So it's a like almost like a derivative of methamphetamine.
yeah,
So it's
100%.
like
Which I've never.
Adderall is the shit, I'll tell you that right now. Like I never thought that I would have the ability to get as much done as I did, but I like totally did. So then of course, like I'm being successful. I know what this like secret cure to everything is,
Mhm.
and I'm gonna start taking it more. And then like all throughout my sophomore year, like all these things kept happening, and then I like somehow got into like a relationship with someone. Like he's an amazing guy, but like our relationship wasn't going to work from the very beginning. I think we just wanted to try it,
Mhm.
and then like some tragedies had
Kinda dip your
happened.
toe in the water.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And his mom was like, we went out to breakfast with his mom. We weren't dating; we were just like best friends. And his mom's like, "So, are you dating or not?" And that was
Mhm.
that was like the thing that kind of tipped that over.
Yeah.
And he's a great guy, and like I had a great time with him, and he's killing it in life now, so I'm
Good.
happy for him. And then like along the time we had like a tragedy that happened at Shasta during spring break my sophomore year, where someone had passed away. Um, Based off of like I don't exactly know what it is, and I don't want to categorize it as anything. Like a life was lost,
Mhm.
and this guy that died, I had partied with him a lot, like, and he used to walk me home because I would like I'm gonna be honest, I was a runner when I was hammered. So I'd be like, peace out if I was ready to be done. And he would always like catch me and be like, no, I'm gonna walk home with you.
Good.
Um, and then we got the news that he passed away from Shasta, and it was like, oh my God, like, oh my God. And um, there's, like, a couple other things in life that, like, happened, like, a little bit I wanna say a year or 2 before that, like, my 16-year-old cousin had been diagnosed with Ewig sarcoma, which is bone cancer,
Oof.
and,
Okay.
he was this very, very bright and vibrant kid and, like, was so funny and just amazing, like, our that's my dad's side of the family, we're all very tight, there was 11 cousins, and
Okay.
we're all very tight, and then he got diagnosed with cancer, and it was like I was watching this person, like, dwindle down in front of me,
Yeah.
um, and then it was, like, the breakup, the loss of this guy that I will admit, like, wasn't the closest to me, but he was, like, someone that would make sure I got home safe and
Right.
because I would get fucked up, like, I'm like you, I'm a blackout binge drinker, like,
Right.
I'm going to do all of that, and, um, I was living in my sorority house at the time, and I actually had gotten caught with alcohol in my room, so I
Mm.
was, like, barred from going to any sort of events, and I was like, "You know what? I don't give a shit." Like, I
Right.
still have these over 21-year-old friends who get me to, like, sneak into bars with them, so, I'd rather go to those events with them than, like, curated sorority events that were
Right.
just, like, ridiculous, and I was miserable in my sorority house, like, God bless my roommates because we were still dorm style, so there were still 2 of us in 1 room, and my roommates in the house were just amazing because I was a mess, and
Yeah.
I did my best to hide it, and they tolerated quite a bit of stuff like me. coming into our room, like, super late at night, just being hammered and, like, pushing stuff around and, like, breaking stuff, knocking stuff over, like, all of that sort of stuff. But, like, the catalyst came when I got my very first apartment by myself, and, it was bad, it was bad. I knew as soon as I got it, that was gonna be over, and, I had moved into an apartment that was, like, pretty much right across the street from the frat that I was friends with, and
Convenient.
oh, yeah, it was super
Yeah.
convenient, and, like, there were so many times where, I threw a party at my apartment, and it got, like, massive, and then we, like, went to their apartment, which was 4 stories, but it was, like, thin 4 stories, and, like, each story that you went up, there was, like, different drugs that were being used, and, like, everyone was having a good time, and, like, I used to think, like, "These are the memories that I'm always gonna have, like, this is great, this is why I do drugs and alcohol."
Then you wake up the next morning, don't
Yeah.
remember shit.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Oh, no, there was oh my god, we were at their apartment one time, and we were supposed to be taking Molly or, like, MDMA, and by the time I got there at 8 o'clock,
Mhm.
the dealer had, like, run out of everything. I remember being like, "What the fuck? I even got here early to make sure I got some," 'cause, like, Molly and MDMA and ecstasy were, like, a big part of my life for a hot second, and so I was like, "You know what?" Oh, he had to run down to Salem to get the and, like, re-up and then come back, so I'm like, "Okay, I have 2 hours to kill. What am I gonna do for 2 hours?" Well,
Right.
I drank. I
Right.
drank, and then he comes back, and I take this thing. I don't even know how much it was, like, the frat guys had put it in my hand, and I was like, "Cool, just down it." And then I'm passed out. I'm not passed out, I'm, like, laying on the floor, like, vibrating. Like, I'm
Yeah.
so fucked up, I'm so all this sort of stuff, like and all the frat guys are, like, gathered around me because like, we were in a room, like, the cool kids room where we do, like, all the drugs,
Right.
at the top floor with, like, the president of the frat. And I'm, like, literally laying on the floor, like, vibrating, and all I just see, like, these heads all around me being like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "I'm fine, I'm fine." And, like, that the next day after that was, like, kind of a wake-up call of, like, I should've stopped drinking way before
Right.
this, like, um, and I
Because
would
talk about putting yourself in a very sticky situation, right?
Mhm.
Like, luckily you trust these guys, I hope, and obviously nothing happened.
Yeah.
But you hear these stories over and over again of like stuff like that happening,
Mhm.
and then it turns sour so
Yeah.
fast, and then next thing you know, like you're in a more sticky situation. Everybody around you is in a worse situation. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's like, uh, yeah, but it's crazy because those are like the moments you think about of like
Mhm.
that could have been real bad.
Oh,
You know what I
yeah.
mean? Like
Oh, yeah.
that could have went sour. That could have went
Mhm.
south really fast. Um, and God, do I have a lot of those.
Oh, yeah.
Like, man, when that cop dropped me off at my house, like that could have been real not good for me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, luckily, by the grace of God, sometimes it was just a matter of, hey, we're gonna take you home
Yeah.
and you're gonna just go home and go to sleep kind of
Yeah.
situation, right? But in those moments, you're like, you wake up or you get sober and you look back on them and you're like, man, that could have been real bad. You
Oh
know what
my
I mean?
god. Well, and it's funny too because, like, this is just, like, the start of, like, my addiction with harder substances, not the
hmm
start, and we're about a year or 2 into it. Um, but then, like, it quickly turned out where the situations did end up bad. And,
hmm
like, I did do this, and I did do that, and this happened to me because I repeated these situations, like
You know what's so crazy about you saying that, right? When I first walked into the AA room,
Mhm.
right, this is something that's seared into my brain. No matter
Mhm.
how much alcohol I drink, no matter how much I go back and forth into rehab, this is seared into my brain, right? I
Mhm.
walked into an AA room, and this old timer, because I was 20, 21, 22, maybe the first time I walked into an AA room,
Mhm.
um, this old timer looked at me and he goes, "It's not the what ifs, it's the not yets."
Yes.
And I
Yes.
was like, dude, you have no idea what you're talking about. Like, you're fine. Like, it's, you know what I mean? Like, I was like, because the first time I spoke, I was 21 or 22. The first time I spoke, it was like out of fear, right? Of
Mhm.
losing all these things, losing the girl, losing the house, losing the truck, losing the
Mhm.
kid, like losing all these things, right?
Mhm.
And that's what kind of sparked his comment of like, it's not the what ifs, it's the not yet.
Mhm.
I was like, no, dude, like I'm in like I'm in AA, like I'm trying to get
Mhm.
better. There's no way that's gonna happen to me, right? Well,
Yeah.
fast forward to the last time I went to rehab.
Mhm. It
Yeah,
happened.
it happened.
Yeah.
Like I lost the house, lost the truck, lost my kid for a while, lost
Mhm.
my dog, right? I sounded like an old sad country song. 'Cause it was like, it's the truth, right? Like,
Yeah, oh,
it
totally.
happened,
Yeah.
and so you saying, like, "Yeah, that moment wasn't bad, but it did turn bad."
Oh,
Because,
yeah.
again, it's not the what ifs, it's the not
Not yet.
yets.
Next day being like, "Oh my god," like,
Right.
um, number 1, let's do that again. Number 2, that was probably a bad idea, but I'm gonna do it anyways.
Right.
And, like, that was the mantra that I had, like, going through, like, constant partying. When I finally turned 21, like, I was buying wine or liquor every single day, and,
Mhm.
in the like, junior year is always the hardest,
Right.
in any sort of, like, schooling. Junior year is the year,
Right,
and
the
that's
tell-all year or
yeah.
whatever, yeah.
Yeah, and so, like, I knew that if I had even had a thought of going to law school, I had to do really good. I did amazing my junior year, but I did it by drinking and using Adderall and cocaine, and I remember, like, this was 2 or 3 years after my cousin was diagnosed with cancer, and, like, it wasn't I didn't feel like the, partying had gotten that bad, and then I'm, like, sitting at my, table in my apartment that my roommate and I stole from a frat. Um, and there's, like, a few of us that are, like, studying there. It's 10:30 at night. I have a big midterm the next day, and I get a text from my dad that's like, "Cody died."
Oh,
And I remember, like, dropping my phone and everyone around me being like, "What happened? Like, what
right.
happened?" And they're like, "My cousin died from cancer. Like,
Mm.
he's dead. He's dead." And, then I might cry thinking about it. But, like, that was so sad because that like, our cousin group had been, like, so tight, and a lot of
Mhm.
us had moved to, like, different parts to go to college and do that, but, like, every single time we came back together we have a lot of family events. Every single time we came back together, it was like we were all just siblings
Right.
because we, like, loved each other so much and hung out with each other, and so, like, the fact that one of us is now gone, um, broke me. Like,
Right.
it really broke me, and then it was like I felt like when I got that text from my dad, that was like him telling me I need to tell the cousins. So I'm, like, calling my 2 sisters, I'm calling in 2 other cousins, like, I'm trying to get in contact with everyone to be like, "We all need to have some positive thoughts right now, and I'd rather
Right.
you find out for me." Um, and it was really sad, but, like, that was also just, like, another catalyst to, like, keep things going because the one thing I don't do well with is grief,
Right. Right.
and,
You're swollen. You're swollen.
oh, yeah, and it was just, like it was absolutely insane, like, this poor 18-year-old that had just battled bone cancer for the
Right.
last 2.5 years is now gone,
Right.
and, like, I'm glad that he's not in pain anymore, and I know he's an angel watching over all of us, but it was just, like, so sad, like, I felt like our family split up for a second, and then it's like, what do we do? Like, we haven't really dealt with a death in the family, and, like,
Right.
um, the Sornson part of the family, my dad's side, like, is very matriarchal, like, the our grandmother, we call her Nanny, because she's British, she's a very loud British woman,
Mhm.
but, like, Nanny was, like, the glue that held us all together, and she didn't even know what to do at that point. And, so it was like, "Well, fuck, I have to finish out my junior year. Like, I have
Right.
to finish it out. I have to do this." Like, um, and I just kept drinking, and then I drank more, and then I used more, and then I started working for a dispensary, and I got free weed all the time, and then, I started working for Chipotle because the dispensary closed down for some reason I'm unsure of, and then at Chipotle is where I met the last person that I'd be with in my addiction that just was the end all be all to, like, absolutely everything.
Well, and it's we talked about, like, that snowball, right? And we talked about, like, it's almost like the snowball hits, like, hard pack and then goes soft pack, so it packs
Yeah.
even tighter, and you look at all the events that happen in your life that kind of continue that roll, right? Like,
Mhm.
maybe the snowball hits a flat spot and rolls slowly for a little while, and you
Yeah.
kinda plateau, and then all of a sudden it fucking falls off a cliff,
Mhm.
starts going really fast again, and then it starts to plateau, right? And it's all
Mhm.
about these events that happen in your life.
Oh, yeah.
And what's crazy is, you had a cousin that passed away. I too had a cousin that passed away. More a little sudden, right?
Mhm.
He died of an overdose. Um, and I look back at that moment, and it's 100% like you said, like a catalyst, right? Like this
Mhm.
big event in my life that happened that I couldn't process. Like there was
Mhm.
things that I couldn't process. I was at the gym and I was doing okay, right?
Mhm.
Like I was still drinking, but I was gaining a little bit of traction, right? I was
Mhm.
getting a little bit more functional while I was drinking,
Mhm.
and so I was at the gym, and my mom calls me, and she's like, "Hey, where are you at right now?" She's been crying. I can hear it in her
Mhm.
voice, right? She's like, "Hey, where are you at right now?" I was like, "I was at the gym. I'm at the gym. What's up?" She's like, "Let me know when you get home." I was like, "No, dude. Like, you
Yeah,
need to."
don't
And
do that.
I was like, I can tell you're crying. I can tell you're upset. Just tell me what's going on." And she lets me know. My cousin passed away, and he was 21. He had been battling addiction, right? And but he was too, like, starting to get some traction, right? He had gotten into his first apartment, like he was trying to be better, right?
Mhm.
And I think, right, that it's one of those things, and they say it all the time in rehab, right? That, like, the first 90 days of an opiate or any addict really is like the most dangerous time,
Mhm.
because you go back and you've been out long enough that your tolerance has dropped, but you've not been out long enough to know, like, you still feel like you need an X amount, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's what happened, right? That's a speculation at best. But anyway, so she tells me this. And I remember I'm sitting at the leg extension machine. And I'm sitting on the machine and I'm talking to her. And I just get up, I walk out. And I walk out, I'm trying to hold it together because pride, right? I'm trying to
Yeah.
hold it together. I get to the car. I get in the car, and the gym that I was at was like 4 minutes from my house. Like, it
Mhm.
was right down the road. I couldn't hold it together. I lost it on the way home, right?
Yeah.
I walk into the house, and again, I'd been doing okay, right? I was just drinking beer, like, I was still drinking a lot, but I
Mhm.
was just drinking beer at the time, like, I thought I was doing okay,
Mhm.
right? And, I walk in, and the girl I was seeing at the time sees, obviously, that I'm visibly distraught, like, tore up, and I can't get the words out, and I finally tell her, and she's like, "What do you need?" I was like, "I need vodka. Like, I
Yeah.
need I need a drink." She's like, "Okay." She's like, "Are you sure?" And I was like, "I don't need to hear this BS of, like,
Mhm.
drinking's bad and all this stuff. Like, I'm in a moment right now where I don't wanna feel it anymore. Give me alcohol." "Okay." So she gets up, she goes to the liquor store for me, grabs me a bottle, she knows what I drank, brings it back, and, I start drinking, and that that moment, right? There's been things past that that obviously have affected me a lot, but that moment was the moment where I was like, I no longer wanna feel whatever the
Mhm.
hell I'm feeling. And so I called out of work for the next 3 days. This
Mhm.
happened on, I think, like, a Wednesday, or no, it happened on a Sunday, actually. It happened over the weekend, I'm pretty sure. And, so I call out of work for the next week, actually. And, every day I'm drinking and I'm crying, I'm drinking and I'm crying. And the
Mhm.
other thing about me too is, like, when I was in my addiction, the only time you saw me cry is when I was drunk.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
didn't see me cry when I was sober. You didn't see
Mhm.
me feel emotion when I was sober. You saw me cry when I was drunk.
Yeah.
And so I was drinking heavily. I was crying all the time. I was like, you know what? I'm tore up, right? Well, fast forward to uh, his memorial, or his celebration of life. They held it at uh, the Elks Lodge. And so I came prepared, right? I had 2 flasks, 2 tucked into my boots.
Oh, yeah, I get it.
And I'll never forget, I get in there, and I'm there for, like, maybe 10 minutes, right? And a family member comes up and he's like, "Hey, you got something?" She knew, right? Like, I
Yeah.
had something. And so we went to the car and we started drinking again. And then the bar opened. They opened up the bar. And that was like the worst.
Worst thing to do in a
Yeah,
memorial.
yeah. Like, and it just catapulted, right? Well,
Yeah.
that was also the same night that I had broke down to my uncle. I was drunk.
Yeah.
We'd left the celebration. I was way drunk at the time. We stopped. I told the girl I was with, I was like, I need to stop and get something. Right? It's late now, so the liquor stores are closed. So I stop and get a 6 pack of IPAs, I think. We get to my uncle's house, I get like 2 IPAs in, and I lose it with him. And you talk about those aha moments, right? And,
Mhm.
like, that was my way of being like, I need help because I can't continue living this way. And I don't know if it was the alcohol part of me or the fact that I didn't feel when I was sober, and I felt so much when I was drunk. You know
Oh,
what I
yeah.
mean?
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
that was the point in my life where I was like, "I don't want to not feel when I'm not drinking."
Mhm.
Because that's I thought that was my way of processing things.
Right?
Was
Yeah,
like I would
definitely.
drink to feel because I couldn't feel when I was sober. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? Like I was that manly man, you know what I mean? Like I
Yeah.
didn't show emotion unless I was drunk.
Yeah.
And so you talk about like your cousin and like that being a catalyst and the catapult to another catalyst, I should say, of
Mhm.
like your addiction and stuff. And I think it's so crazy that being in recovery, we can look back and see those defining moments in our life and
Mhm.
defining moments in our drinking career. And until you're sober, until you have the gift of recovery, like you don't, at least for me, I can't speak for everybody, but like I didn't see those things as
Yeah.
being, I saw those moments as, yeah, they suck, but it didn't matter if it sucked or if it was great. Like, I was going to drink. But
Yeah.
then you look back and you're like, no, that was a moment where you really, like, this was a feeling, like, this was a thing.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, it's wild. You know what I mean?
It is wild, and I think, what's sad about what you just talked about is the, like, societal norm that men should not show emotions, like, you should consistently be manly and be, like, the breadwinner of the house and all that sort of stuff, and, being a counselor now, I see a lot of men that are dealing with that right now of
Mhm.
just trying to, grasp the fact that they have other emotions besides anger,
Yeah.
and it makes me sad because I like, everyone is deserving of understanding and defining their emotions and feeling them.
Mhm.
And Brene Brown tells us that if we can't selectively numb, if we numb one thing, we numb everything.
Mhm.
And it was crazy because, like, exactly like what you were talking about, like I felt emotions when I was intoxicated, but when we were sober, we didn't feel any emotion because
Mhm.
we numbed our emotions so much with drinking and using and all of that sort of stuff. Like, and I was a shell of myself when I wasn't drinking. And I think that was an excuse that I used quite a bit of, like, "Oh, I'm the fun party Emma," and, like, everyone knows who I am when I'm
Mhm.
intoxicated, and, like, everyone wants to be around me and all of that sort of stuff, and I think the thing that I look back on when I first got into treatment was, like, I told my counselor, I was like, "I was drinking to celebrate," and then she would, like, ask about the bad times in my life, and she'd go, "What how did you react to that?" "Well, I drank." "Okay,
Mhm.
so that's a bad time in your life. You weren't always drinking to celebrate things." And I was like, "No, it was always to celebrate and to have fun." And she's like, "No, like, really look back at everything that happened and how you reacted to it and kind of created an even bigger situation for yourself." And I was like, "Okay, well, I guess that makes sense." But I think it was more prevalent after the death of my cousin, and
Mhm.
because, like, it perpetuates drinking because that's the only thing that we know how to do. Like, that's the only way that we know how to cope is by, like, literally separating ourselves from reality so much that we're drinking our life away.
Mhm.
Because I could, like, I don't know about you, but I couldn't imagine my life without my cousin, and I would assume that that's,
Mm.
like, the same with you, and, so, like, it would I now I know that my life has meaning and that, like, I can live or that he can live vicariously through me or vice versa, or I know he's watching me, but,
Mhm.
like, it was, like, I had not dealt with grief, like, directly to me. Like, yeah, there was a bunch of things that happened in high school. People passed away, unfortunately, and, the the accident that happened at Shasta and all of that sort of stuff, but this was, like, the first person that was, like, the closest to me that had passed away, and I'm like, "What is this feeling? What is grief?" And then I'm,
Mhm.
like, sitting there, like, high as fuck at, like, 2 o'clock in the morning. I think that day, had, like, just taken another Adderall and was, like, had a bottle of vodka next to me, and I'm, like, looking up, like, "What's grief?" Because I cried at the initial, like, text that I had got saying that
Yeah.
he was gone, and then it was, like, nothing after that. I'm like, "Is this a part of grief? Like, what should I experience next?" And then, like, everything I read was like, "Here are the 5 steps of grief," which I don't agree with whatsoever, because I think grief is something that comes and goes constantly, like,
Oh,
through
yeah.
a smell, like, hearing something, seeing someone that looks similar to them, and all that.
Well, and I think, to speak on your point of, like, you've for me, like, when grief happens, because I've had a lot of things happen in my life of people passing away, people
Mhm.
leaving, that sort of thing, and don't think there's a right way or wrong way to grieve.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? I
exactly.
don't think it's so fluid in its own way,
Mhm.
right? Like, I had a daughter who uh, passed in May 2021, and there's good days, right? There's
Yeah,
days where it's like, oh, like, yeah, I can talk about it, just in like casual, not casual, but like in deeper conversations,
yeah,
right? And then there's days where it's like, don't
yeah,
don't bring up her name.
yeah.
Don't talk to me about it. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to be with her. Like, I don't want to. And but that's okay, right? And I looked at my dad one time. He picked me up. This is after this happened. And he picked me up. We're on our way. I think we're on our way to Sandy or something. And I'm either hungover or drunk. I can't remember.
Mhm.
But I'm not feeling great. I know he picked me up just to pick me up and talk to me and like try to get to the bottom of like what's going on in my life and stuff. And he's like, dude, what do you need? And straight up, I looked at him and I was like, Dad, it needs to be okay for me not to be okay right now. And he was okay, like, okay, that's fine. But what do you like? I just need to not be okay. Like, it's okay that I'm not okay, but I need
Mhm.
everybody to agree with me on that. Like, I need everybody to understand that I can't just keep holding it. I can't keep holding it together,
Yeah,
right? And so it's just grief in and of itself is a I think, in my personal opinion, it's one of the trickiest, hardest emotions to feel.
absolutely. And so, like, when this happened, I was like, Why take this kid? Like,
Mhm.
why take him? Why didn't you take me? Like, I'm doing all of this sort of stuff.
Mhm.
Why would you take someone that had, like, such potential in life, and here I am, like, floundering pretty much.
Mhm.
And it sucked so much, and it definitely sent me into, like, another spiral because I can't handle it. Like, grief even now, I feel like I can't handle grief no matter how much I've worked through it. It just it keeps coming back. Like, it
Yeah.
constantly comes back, and I agree with you, like, the talking about grief of one person versus another can be like totally completely different. But then
Mhm.
that means that you have like two types of grief that you need to work through.
Mhm.
And like who the hell can do that? I sure as shit can't. And that's why I'm like stuck in this cycle of like grief and missing people and like just the actualization that they're not here anymore is like what gets me. Is like I don't get to hug them. I
Mhm.
don't get to say hi. I don't get to call them whenever I want to. Like that's the thing that gets me. And the last conversation I had with my cousin, was about weed because
Mm.
he smokes weed to help with cancer and all that sort of stuff, and I had just started working at the dispensary, and he's like, "Yeah, what's the best kind of weed that I could buy to help me?" And I was like, "Here, I got you, Cody, I got you. Here's all
Right.
this sort of stuff." And then, we had a short conversation, I think, before he went to bed, and that was the last time I talked to him,
Ugh.
which was, like, I wanna say a day or 2 before he passed, maybe a little bit more before that. But it was, like, close enough to the time where when he passed, I messaged him immediately, and I was like, "Please tell me this isn't, like, real.
Right.
Like, please do not tell me that you survived this," because he had gone into remission, shortly before he passed, and then it was like he was doing fine, he was gliding, and then just, like, boom, sick again,
I
in
call
the
that
hospital.
the calm before the storm.
Yeah,
And it
exactly.
happens
Every time.
yeah,
Every
every
time.
time.
Every time.
People start doing good, you know, people start thinking they're on the mend, and
Mhm.
then all of a sudden, just
Yeah.
that fast.
Just it's like pulling the carpet out from underneath you,
Mhm.
and it's wild and
So tell me, so we've talked about like, your college and your addiction and how it's all kind of snowballed and that effect, right? That domino effect.
Mhm.
Now, I want to hear about like rehab and kind of what you've done after rehab to kind of help kind of be, live in recovery and be you have what is it? Almost 4 years?
I have 3.5 years.
Yeah.
So my clean date is 2/2/22.
Okay.
Unironically, it was originally supposed to be 1/26/22,
Okay.
and then I wanted to use longer.
Okay.
Um, and I know my story is super long, so
No, you're fine. You're fine. I just want to, make sure we touch on that, like
no,
what
I think
recovery
that
brings and
it's important to touch on something like this because, uh, there's one thing about hearing the mess of addiction, but there's
Mhm.
another thing about hearing the message
Yeah.
of, like, recovery.
Yeah.
And so, like, I ended addiction homeless, jobless, penniless. I was hotel hopping. The last person in my life that I ever thought would leave me left me. I had broken all bridges. I got kicked out of my dad's wedding. like all this sort of stuff. And I was sitting in this hotel room that was paid off for another week, just with like beer cans like scattered all over. And then you know how like every hotel room has like a desk, and
Mhm.
that desk is full of meth and cocaine,
Oh my
and
gosh.
and like the tiny baggies and that sort of stuff. And I remember like I only have a few days left at this hotel room, and I have no idea what I'm gonna do after this. Like
Mhm.
I'm either gonna die or ask for help. And like my parents and family members have been begging me to get help for so long because at this point I had been homeless for about 8 months,
Okay.
but like destroying my life for years after that because I graduated during the pandemic and all that sort of stuff.
Mhm.
Became homeless pretty quickly, all that. Um, but then I called my dad on like one, I think it was right after his birthday because his birthday is January 20th, and was like, I need help.
Mhm.
Like, I need help. Like, I'm either gonna die here or I'm gonna get help. Like, I'm finally ready to get help. And I was so drunk and so high and on like my third day awake. And I remember like being dad, like, Dad, I'm not intoxicated. I swear, please just help me. And he's like, Emma, I know you are. Like I
Right.
can hear it. And I'm like,
It's the
no.
dad sense. My dad's
Yeah.
the same way, dude. I sniff a beer and my dad's like, "Hey, you been drinking?" It's like,
Yeah.
"Dude, I smelled it from across the room." "No, I'm not." It's
Yeah.
funny. It's the
I
dad
know.
sense.
And it's just my dad, and, like, I called my dad because I knew that he would be able to, like, handle the situation a little bit more than my mom,
Mhm.
because she's an emotional wreck, but, like, in the best way possible that I
Mhm.
think that it would be hard for her to, like, figure it out. And so my dad was like, "Okay, I'm gonna make a couple calls. I'm gonna be down in Eugene in a couple of days. Please stay clean until then and answer the phone." I was like, "Okay." Did not stay clean, did not answer the phone, and then it was yeah, 126 was when they first called. Serenity Lane is actually the first one to call me for an assessment because I knew it, like, Serenity Lane's big in Eugene, all of that
Right,
sort of stuff,
right.
so,
'Cause that's
like
located down in Coburg, isn't it?
yeah,
Yeah.
and then they have an outpatient office in Eugene, and it originated in Eugene, so, like, my sorority house, for Sigma Kappa at U of L was actually the first inpatient facility for Serenity Lane.
Wow,
Yeah.
okay.
So, like, I have a weird connection to Serenity Lane.
Yeah.
And then, I dodged their calls quite a bit. Like, my dad had scheduled the assessment. If I got the assessment done at that day, like, my dad had scheduled, like, transportation to get me there. Like, Serenity Lane was gonna help out all that sort of stuff. So that was supposed to be 126. And then I kept using, and I was like, "I am not ready to be done. Like, I'm not. I'm just gonna keep using." My drug dealer had come and hung out with me for, like, 2 days, and I remember telling him, like, "Hey, I'm going to treatment." And he goes, "I'll see you next week."
Yeah.
And, and then I finally like, I remember waking up one day and, like, the room is absolutely destroyed, like, the sheets are soiled, it smells bad, there's just shit everywhere, and my dad, like, comes down and he's like, "I need you to answer the phone," as he's, like, cleaning up the room around me, and I'm, like, in tears with this assessing counselor from Serenity Lane who was, like,
Mhm.
amazing, and I knew that if I wanted to get the help that I needed to be as honest as possible.
Right.
So, like, my poor dad is sitting in this room with me as I'm, like, answering these questions, and you can, like, see on his face being like, "What the fuck?
Yeah.
Like, this happened?" Like, yeah, I've been held
Yeah.
at gunpoint, I've been held at knife point, I've been held at all this sort of stuff.
Right.
Was into sex work when I was in active addiction, and so he's, like, hearing all this as he's, like, cleaning up my room, and then I get off the phone, and she said she was gonna, like, figure some things out with me. My dad sits me in a chair in front of the TV, gives me water, and I watch Catfish. Um, and then we get the call from Serenity Lane again that was like, "I don't think that this is the facility for Emma, due to, like, mental illness and, like, severity of everything." Because it was, alcohol, coke, and meth,
Mhm.
and, like, had done that every single day for probably about 3 or 4 years at that point.
Yeah.
Meth more recently, but then, they refer me to, Awakenings by the Sea in Seaside, an all-women's facility. It is a private facility. So during my, like, treatment experience, like, I give a lot of praise to my grandparents and my dad and my parents because, insurance sucks.
Yeah.
Insurance sucks, and my grandparents, used money to help push me through treatment. So, if it wasn't for them, then I probably wouldn't be clean now. And then
Mhm.
I recognize that that's like a privilege that I had, and not everyone has that. But I did 60 days at Awakenings by the Sea. I went through detox. I started detoxing on my dad's bed. The February 2nd is the first full day that I had not used.
Mhm.
Um, and it was terrible. Like, it was
Mhm.
terrible. Like, honestly, a reason why I'm not going to relapse is because I don't ever wanna go through withdrawal again.
Yeah.
Like, that was absolutely terrible, and, like, there was no sort of, like, withdrawal from meth or cocaine because 'cause they're just stimulants,
Right.
but and you probably know the come down of cocaine where you're pissed off, like,
Yeah.
and you need
Irritable,
more. Yes.
grumpy, and you just hate everything and
Yeah.
anything around you. Yeah.
Yes, and you fiend like
Yeah.
no other, and
Yeah.
so, like, I was feeling that way, they, like, searched me, all this sort of stuff when I got into Awakenings, but that place saved my life, like, the staff there was incredible except for a couple people, but, like, I have nothing but amazing things to say,
Yeah.
and it's crazy because there was, like, an intern counselor who also acted as, like, a tech,
Mhm.
and she told me, she's like, "I know that you like law, but have you ever thought about being a counselor? Because I think you would do a really good job." And
Mhm.
I remember being like, "No, I can't do this. Like, I can't
Right.
listen to addicts all day, every single day. Like,
Right.
I'm an addict myself. Like, I can't do this." And then I got to Crestview, where
Mhm.
you and I met. Treatment is the best thing that ever happened to me. And the sad part is that it's not available to everyone. Like, Oregon is ranked 48th in the nation right now for resources from adolescents to young adult for drug and alcohol and mental health issues. And, it's just sad. So and then I went to Crestview. I got into Oxford housing after, so I did 5 months of, like, pretty much inpatient treatment and then
Mhm.
3 months of outpatient, and then I got into, like, a women's Oxford house, and I was scared shitless to be in this house. Like,
Yeah.
I would just can't like, I was in a sorority house with 50 other women. I'm like, "This is gonna be exactly like that, and,
Right.
like, it's gonna
Right.
suck." No, that house was the best thing that ever happened to me. Like, I learned to trust women again.
Mhm.
I learned to love women again. Those are some of my lifelong friends. I lived there for 2.5 years.
Mhm.
Um, and now I have my own apartment. So, like, I really
Congratulations.
thank you.
Yeah.
I give a lot of praise to treatment and to Oxford houses. And, during that time I was in my Oxford house, I was working at Costco outside of treatment and did not like it.
Yeah.
Did not like it. Costco is for a special breed of people.
Yeah.
And then I
I think
remember
retail in the big box stores for any
100%.
any you
Yeah.
have to be a special breed to be able
Oh,
to
yeah.
work there. Yeah,
Oh, yeah,
absolutely.
it's terrible. Um, and Costco shoppers, I can say this now because I'm a Costco shopper, but they're, like, awful.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
especially in, like, the Portland areas, but, like, I love the job, but I didn't like it. Like, it definitely ran its course, and so I came home one night from, working, and I had just, like, created this support group,
Yeah.
and, like, we used to go dancing and play pool, and we did it all sober, and I remember being like, "What the fuck? Like, we can
Mhm.
actually have fun
Right,
sober?"
right.
And I don't know about you, but I had fun in treatment.
It
I
was
love treatment.
it's funny. I have a little bit of a treatment experience with a couple different rehabs, right?
Mhm.
I've been in rehab 4 times.
Yeah,
Been in jail once. And it works, you
yeah.
know. It didn't work for me, just given, my story,
Mhm.
but and I'm not blaming like by any means am I not blaming Crestview, right?
Yeah,
I'm just it wasn't the rehab that ultimately gave me the gift of long-term sobriety,
yeah,
right? But I loved it, right?
yeah,
And I still talk to one of the therapists. I still, for lack of a better term, like not rely on him, but I still know that I can reach out and be like, "Hey, I need
yeah,
help." You know what I mean?
yeah, exactly.
And I think that's what made Crestview so special.
Yeah,
Is not necessarily like the facility or how it's programmed or like what it was, but it was the people that were there. You know what I mean?
exactly,
Like not only
exactly,
therapists and upper management, all those, but like also the people that you went. You know what I mean? The
exactly.
people that you were there with that you
Oh, yeah.
grew to love, right?
Oh, yeah, and the people that were at Crestview when you and I were there, like, that's why I say Crestview was fun because
Yeah.
they were
Because we knew how to
so
have fun in
yeah,
recovery. You know what I
yeah,
mean? We knew how to be sober but still enjoy
yeah.
like the dance what or was it the dance
Yeah,
thing?
we did, like, there was some sort of, like, dance and yoga instructor there,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
we have guys that are, like, sitting on the ground, putting their legs or, like, their knees over their heads, and, like,
Yeah.
it was literally just so much fun because I think that the staff of Crestview, especially the clinicians, like, do a really good
Mhm.
job at fostering, like, a good environment,
Yeah.
to it, like, enhance that, like, connection or
Yeah.
at least promote it in some sort of way, and yeah, it was
It was
it
a
was
while it was a
fun.
crazy time.
It was
Yeah.
a crazy time, and,
And if you would have told me, my 15-year-old self, that if there was a moment in my life where, uh, I would miss going to rehab,
mhm.
like, I would have called you crazy.
Yeah.
I'd have been like, "No way." But there's times even in long-term recovery or longish term recovery, right? Where you
Mhm.
look back and you're like, "Man, can I just go and hang out for a week? Like, can
Yeah.
I just go and just
Yeah.
be there for a week? Like, I don't need it right now, but
Mhm.
it'd be cool, you
Yeah.
know?"
Oh,
So
yeah. It's funny because I work in treatment now,
mhm.
and my first job working in treatment, I was an office coordinator. So I managed 2 offices, outpatient offices in Portland, and, there was a counselor I worked with, and she used to tell me, like, "I had a blast in jail." And I remember being like, "What the fuck?" Well, you know what? I had a blast in treatment, and you
Yeah.
don't hear that a lot, and,
No.
uh, it's funny, and, yeah, so I work in treatment now because I wanted to be like those clinicians that we had, and,
Mhm.
I actually worked for Crestview for a bit
Oh,
and,
really?
like, loved it there, and I unfortunately left to go work with kids. So, I'm a CADC1, a
Mhm.
CRM, and a QMHAR. I also have my bachelor's degree in social sciences, with a focus in crime law and society, so psychology, sociology, and law.
Mhm.
Um and I left Crestview, which was literally one of my favorite jobs ever. Like, uh, the staff there is amazing, and the new counselors that they have is amazing.
Mhm.
Um, Shout out to Sandy,
Mhm.
who is one of my absolute favorite people and is doing amazing work out there. But I work for 40 Recovery
Okay.
now, as a adolescent outpatient counselor, from ages 14 to 17. And 40 is like a really fast growing organization right now.
Mhm.
Like we have treatment centers that are going to be opened up pretty much all over Oregon, as well as our recovery centers, because that's what 40 started out as, is a peer service, um, like peer mentor services, excuse me. And they have like one in Hillsboro, Gresham, Portland, like all of this. And they're just like, um, pretty much I call them hangout spaces,
Mhm.
for, like, safe and sober people to go hang out, and, like, they have meetings there, and then the mentor program that runs through there of, like, recovering addicts that have their CRMs that, get to guide current, like, active addicts through kind of, like, what recovery looks like and all this sort of
Mhm.
stuff, and then, 40 opened young adult treatment, so 18 to 35, I wanna say in December, and then we just opened adolescent in March. So, I've been in the recovery field for 2 years now,
Mhm.
besides my own recovery. So I just learned that, I can only keep what we have by giving it away, right?
Mhm.
And after that woman at Awakenings by the Sea that said that I might be good at this, I got a call to first start working in treatment, and, that supervisor is my current supervisor now, and he is someone that, like, has never given up on me, has saw something in me that I never saw within myself, and, like, he presented me with an opportunity to become a counselor, and I couldn't say no, and it was
Yeah.
funny because he always carries around his Stanley Cup, but it's funny because he, like, slammed the Stanley Cup on my desk, and he's like, "I'm not taking no. Like, I'm not taking no. You're doing this."
Yeah.
And within 2 months, I was a full-time outpatient counselor.
Wow.
And absolutely love my job. I love my job. But the crazy thing about it is like based off of my own trauma, I never thought that I would hear similar things from 14 to 17-year-olds right now.
Yeah. And it's, you know, just like you said, it takes a special person to be work at Costco. I think wholeheartedly it takes a special person to work in recovery. When I got a rehab the last time, I also got my CADCR and was
Mhm.
going to I worked at a treatment facility because that's what I want to do, right?
Mhm.
Or I wanted to do, should say.
Mhm.
And it's it was taxing on me.
Yeah.
I didn't have the experience of fully running a class or a group or anything like
Mhm.
that, but I don't know that I could do it. And you talk about the resources in Oregon and what were ranked, which is absolutely astonishing to me. But also like the pay that people get
I know.
for counseling and being in the recovery field, and even not in the recovery field, like just plain counselors, right?
Mhm.
Is just it breaks my heart because like people trying to make a living helping other people
Yeah.
is and it blows me away. And that's why like this Daily Addict podcast, and
Mhm.
because I felt this need in my life, right? To be able to turn something on, listen to something that's two addicts in recovery, some maybe not, right?
Mhm.
Talking about their story and talking about their life and what it is to live in recovery or what it is to live in suffering
Mhm.
and addiction.
Yeah.
Because I felt that need in my life, right?
Mhm.
Because let's be honest, right? Life gets busy, life gets going crazy, going fast. Um, and sometimes you don't get to a meeting when you want
Yeah.
or when you need to, right?
Exactly.
But having a space and having a source where you can just turn it on, listen to it on your drive, listen to
Mhm.
it on the max, on the train, on the bus, whatever, or just walking down the street, being able
Mhm.
to turn it on and just listening to two other, people that you can understand, right? Because
Mhm.
we spoke about this way early on in the podcast, but like, or maybe we did, I can't remember. But you, as an addict, as somebody in recovery, you come to know that's why AA works.
Mhm.
That's why NA works.
Mhm.
Is because you're in a group of people, you're around people that understand and look at you without judgment, without
Mhm.
bias, without anything. No matter how wild your story is, no matter how wild the journey is, you get to look at people and you know that they understand you on a level that people around us don't really get, right?
100%.
I love my dad and I love, my partner and, my family. Um, but they don't understand to
Yeah.
the level, right? They don't understand to the level like you understand, or they
Mhm.
don't understand to the level of the guy that I just met at an AA room, right?
Mhm.
They try and
Yeah.
they're supportive, right? But there's something special about another addict talking to another addict
Mhm.
about their story and being able to understand each other on a level that normies just can't quite grasp,
Yeah.
right? And like I play clean and sober softball, right? That's kind of my
Mhm.
thing. And I trust everybody on my team to a level that my partner doesn't even really
Yeah.
understand. You know what I mean? And it's because like I know I could pick up the phone right now and call any one of them, even
Mhm.
if they're not on my team. I can call any one of them.
Mhm.
Be like, look, man, I'm struggling.
Yeah.
I need some help, and they would be here in at the length of time it takes to drive
Mhm.
here. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? With like a minute longer to get dressed or whatever, right?
Yeah.
But that level is, and that's why the step 12 is to give back to
Yeah.
service, right?
Yeah.
And I found with the Daily Addict, I found myself earning for that. I
Mhm.
wanted to do that, right? I wanted to be back in the recovery business. But
Mhm.
again, we talked about the resources, the pay, all these
Yeah.
things, right? I don't know that I could financially make that move.
Mhm.
And but I was like, dude, I need to do it,
Mhm.
right? And that's why I coach. That's a part of the reason I
Yeah.
coach is because it's the same concept, right? I give back. I give the
Mhm.
experiences back to these kids that you don't know what their home life's like. You don't know
Yeah.
what they're dealing with on the outside. But I can be a pillar. I can be a mentor for them and help guide them and bring them into a maybe a little bit better of a
Mhm.
situation than they have or than they did in the past, right? Um, so it's crazy, and recovery gave all that to me. Like,
Exactly.
recovery is the reason that I'm like this, right? The
Mhm.
reason that and recovery is weird in the fact that everybody's journey in recovery looks different, right? Some
Mhm.
people don't have a joyous, optimistic look on recovery,
Yeah.
right? Whether it's because they were forced to get clean, they weren't ready, or whatever the case may be, or they're dry drunk,
Mhm.
which I see a lot, right?
Yeah.
Um, and for those of you that don't know what dry drunk is, it's basically living sober but not having a program of some
Yeah.
form or another, right? Um, and so you're just kind of white knuckling it is the term that a lot of people use is they're
Mhm.
white knuckling their life through sobriety,
Mhm.
which I've done.
Yeah.
And I have continued that pattern for a little bit, right? But it's
Mhm.
being able to recognize those patterns and behaviors of like, hey, I'm not living the way I need to be living because I'm
Mhm.
irritable, I'm anxious, I'm grumpy, I'm stressed out, all these things,
Yeah.
right? And it's like, okay, why am I like that? Well, Brandon, it's been 3 weeks since you've been to a meeting, or been a
Yeah.
month since you've been to a meeting, or
Exactly.
4 months since you've been to a meeting. Go to a meeting, talk to somebody, be
Mhm.
around. And ever since I started the Daily Addict podcast, I get these messages on here, and this is the first official like podcast, right? Like I
Mhm.
had an interview over online, but this is the first like somebody coming in, sitting down, having a conversation, right? And
Mhm.
even at that moment, I've had so many people reach out and be
Yeah.
like, "This is what you need. This
'Cause
is
this is a
what we
big
need."
deal. Yeah.
And my dream. you know, people ask me like, "What's your goal with the Daily Addict?" Right? And
Mhm.
it's like my dream is to be able to help somebody get through rehab
Mhm.
and them not have to worry about the financial burden of it.
Exactly.
Like
Exactly.
I don't know. There's obviously programs and things in place to help people with that. But to be able to work with a rehab or work with a treatment center or uh, a recovery center or whatever, right? And be able to work with them and be like, hey, look, I'm giving a sponsorship to whoever.
Mhm.
And I don't care what it is. I don't care what it looks like. Here's what this is. You distribute how you
Mhm.
want. And that's the main goal other than reaching people is go beyond just the podcast, right? And whether
Yeah.
I make $1 on this or make fucking $1,000,000 on this, that
Yep.
doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is the messages that people send in,
Yep.
the people that talk to me about their recovery and about their struggles, right? I have this gal on the Daily Addict that she's been kind of communicating with me back and forth, and she's still
Mhm.
in suffering. She's still suffering addict, and but she felt comfortable enough, and that's the big thing
Yeah.
is they felt comfortable enough to reach out on a very public site and
Mhm.
talk to me about this stuff.
Mhm.
And having you here and having you be so open and vulnerable and honest, right? That's
Mhm.
the biggest thing is you talked about I knew when I signed up or when I talked to this assessment counselor, if I really wanted help, I needed to be as honest as possible.
Mhm.
And that, it says it right there in the big book. You ready to live a life of rigorous honesty.
Yep.
And that's what it takes. Like,
Mhm.
and it's just incredible to me that there's the lack of resources that you spoke
Yeah.
on, right? And that more people don't hear that message.
Mhm.
That again, like you talked about, you want to give back what was so freely given to you.
Mhm.
That's what it's it's simple, but it's not easy.
Oh yeah,
You know what I mean?
100%.
And
It's
so,
blood, sweat, and tears. Like
yeah.
it's um, it's absolutely insane. Being from your side and then also from mine. Like, um, I like 40 specifically. Like I chose this organization and then to come on this podcast too because I think that both of us, what we're trying to do is like expand everything, and that's exactly like what 4D is trying to do. That's what a lot of
Mhm.
other treatment centers are trying to do because like we're noticing that addiction is getting younger and younger, and then
Mhm. I mean, there's kids in middle school that are doing
oh yeah,
drugs. Like
no, I know.
my youngest sister was in high school,
Mhm.
and she was talking to me about stuff that I was like, "Girl, I didn't even know what that was until I was 20. Like,
Yeah,
what are you talking about right now?"
exactly, exactly, and I see that in my clients, and, it just makes me so sad because I'm like, I relate to you because, like, no one taught me that I had a chance to live a good life without drugs and alcohol, so I'm
Mhm.
going to be that person for you,
Mhm.
and then we're also gonna give you X, Y, and Z as resources, and please listen to this and do that, and, like, it's funny because a couple of them will call me, like, their big sister, and it's like, that's okay because like that's keeping a good rapport between us. But like, sometimes you do need that older sibling that's gonna tell you like there's a light at the end of the tunnel and
Mhm.
all of that sort of stuff. And like I work my butt off to make sure my clients are taken care of and that like, to make sure that 40 is expanding and doing all this sort of stuff. And like these kids right now are our future. Like,
Yeah.
and even, like, addicts our age are still our future,
Yeah.
and what are we doing to them? Like, nothing. We're not doing anything to help them. There's barely any resources there. I mean, yeah, there's podcasts. There's a couple good recovery podcasts I like, and then, of
Yeah.
course, this being number 1. Um,
Thanks for that.
but it just, like, it feels never ending, but I know that there's a light at the end of the tunnel because if there was for me an active addiction and I can get in recovery, there is for other people, and, that's why we need things like this to share our stories. And I'll tell you right now, there is not a single connection that is better than one addict helping another.
No.
Not a single, like,
Wholeheartedly. Like, speak that is something that and if you think for a second that you're gonna feel that as soon as you get into early recovery, you, in my experience, are sorely mistaken, okay? Because I say this very honest and open about it. When I first got into the rooms, I was like, "Dude, you are speaking a different freaking language than
yeah,
what I'm hearing,"
yeah,
right? And for those in early recovery, uh, look for the similarities and not the differences, because that's the main
Exactly.
mistake that I made when I got into the rooms.
Mhm.
Is I sat there and I thought, I don't belong here,
Mm.
because I was listening for the differences in our stories. Comparative, right? I'm a competitive person, so I'm looking at this like
Yeah.
I'm like, no, dude,
Yeah.
I did this and you did this. This is different, right?
Mhm.
But the gift of being able to sit in the room and listen to the similarities of what people talk about.
Mm.
My uncle, shout out to him. I love him to death. Um, he tells me all the time, every meeting's a good meeting if you're there to listen.
Love that.
And it's true.
Mhm.
Even meetings in my early recovery, I look back on and I think about of like, I walked out of a meeting in early recovery because I was pissed
Yeah.
because it was in relation to, we were talking about death in the family and specifically death of a kid and all these things, right? And this guy was up there and he was talking about, I found grace in God and I'm praying and all these things and talking like optimistic kind of feeling, right?
Oh, yeah, that pissed me off too.
And I'm sitting there and I'm like, there is not a single thing you can tell me right now that
Mm.
makes this okay.
Yeah.
Not a single thing. And but I wasn't there to listen. I
Mhm.
was there to gain something out of it beyond just just a
Yeah.
story or just a piece of it. I was there to hopefully be an end all be all and fix
Mhm.
everything in my life that's going on, right?
Mhm.
And that wasn't the case, obviously.
Mhm.
Um, But, in early recovery, I found it really challenging for me to understand that addict helping another addict statement.
Mhm.
The, you know, being able to share with a stranger, right? Coming from the background of not even being able to show emotion unless I'm out,
Mhm.
unless I'm intoxicated. Heaven forbid you're going to tell me that I have to be able to trust this person that I just met in this
Mhm.
room in this dark basement that I have no idea where I'm at and I don't know
Yeah.
what's going on.
Yeah.
Get bent, dude. There's no
Yeah.
way I'm doing that.
Exactly.
But it's true. Like it's wholeheartedly, 100%, the honesty behind that, the truth behind that. Like, there is no better connection made than somebody who's been through similar story, similar journey,
Mhm.
knows what addiction's like, knows that chain that's wrapped around you that
Mhm.
you can't break no matter how hard you try.
Mhm.
Uh, and it's incredible. And
It
that's why I
is.
think this is incredible, right? Is not only do we get a chance to share and we
Mhm.
get a chance to talk and be open and honest with each other, but also everybody out here, right?
Mhm.
Everybody that's with us that can be open and honest and feel the comfortability. Like
Mhm.
you are willing to share your story, right? I don't have a lot of followers right now, but there's 900 other people that are going to listen to this,
Heck
hopefully,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You don't know probably half of them or three quarters of them,
Mhm.
right? But you were honest and you were open and you were still willing to come out. And that's another big thing is being willing, right?
Yeah.
The willingness to change. Um,
I had a counselor in residential. So I think what talking about the early recovery thing of like
mhm,
connecting with others or having to listen to others is like I think we are so used to isolation and being separated from other people that it was like such a foreign concept.
mhm.
But like when I was in residential, I was the youngest and one of two drug addicts. Everyone else was alcoholics, and I remember calling the older women winos because I'm like these winos are not going to understand anything that
Yeah,
I went through.
yeah,
And, ironically enough, they
yeah.
did, but I remember, my counselor in residential that's like, "You just have to open your ears." Like, she's like, "Do you wanna be alone forever?" I'm like, "No, like, I'm funny, I'm a people person."
Right, right.
And she goes, "Well, that's not gonna happen if you don't open your ears and just listen to what other people have to say."
Yeah.
And then she told me the worst thing that has ever been told to me, "You're not the knower of everything." And I'm like,
Oh,
I
yeah,
am. What are you
yeah.
talking about?"
Talk about that
Yeah.
ego and
Yeah.
addiction. You know what I mean? That's
Exactly,
crazy.
exactly, and that was just like that, like, ego inflates your head, and that just, like, popped it right there, but it was, like,
Mhm,
so true, so I went into the rooms being as open-minded as possible, and I did everything that they suggested, right? Like, I'm a member of Narcotics Anonymous, I, found a home group, got a support group, found a higher power, found a sponsor, and worked the steps.
mhm,
Um and I did all of that, and, like, I think the cool thing about the connection between other addicts, depending on, like everyone's program looks different.
mhm.
Some people work the 12 steps, some people don't. But no matter what, as long as you're working a program, like, all of that stuff is gonna tell you more about yourself than anything else would. Which is like what's that driving connection between us is that we are honest, we are open, and we are willing with on top of everything. And so like I mean, of course not everyone is working a perfect program or chooses to work a program, but like I know between you and I, like, I trust that you're going to be open with me, and I think that you do the same, and so that means that we have this, like, connection that, yeah, again, we couldn't create with, a normie, unfortunately.
Yeah,
I love
yeah,
that nickname, though, but
yeah.
it's, like, because we've chosen to work on ourselves, like, and it took us a while to do that, but, like, you walk into a room, and a majority of people have done the same thing, and so, like, I love listening to people, like, speak in meetings who are, like, going through a hard time, but, like, talking about all the steps that they put into place to get over it and, like,
Mhm. All the
talk
tools in the toolbox kinda
yeah,
situation.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
and I never thought that I could have a toolbox and, like, talking about the thing that you heard in the meeting when we first walked out is, like, that's the same thing with me of, like, the spirituality of things or the optimism and all that, and I'm like, "What Kool-Aid are you drinking?"
Right,
Because I
right,
don't
and
wanna
where
be
do
a part of
yeah,
that.
yeah,
And,
and then where do I stay away from that,
yeah,
you know? Yeah.
exactly, and, like, now I'm, like, such an optimistic person, like, I try to be as positive as possible while also being realistic and, like, um, the spirituality of things, like, I have my higher power, which I never thought that I would have, and I get to meet people like you and do all this sort of stuff. Like, I think one day I would love to travel the world and like go to a meeting in like all the countries that I can. I
Mm.
worked with someone who did that, and he even went to a meeting in Qatar
Oh,
and said that
wow.
it was amazing. And I'm like, damn, I'm missing out. Like, let's go meet all these addicts all over the
Oh,
world.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
go spread this message and
and
be a part of it.
it's incredible that something I'd be curious to know what the again, I'm speaking of finding the similarities, but I'd be
Hmm.
curious to know what the different levels is for each meeting around
Hmm.
in Qatar or
Yeah,
Thailand or Vietnam or wherever, you know what I mean?
yeah,
Like, wherever there's a meeting, right, what are they talking about? You know what I mean?
exactly.
What is because obviously our cultures are very different,
Hmm.
right? If you go from here to Thailand, it's gonna be very different culture, very different, background, very different understanding,
Hmm.
but also having that same, um, kinda mindset of looking for the similarities,
Hmm.
right? And I'd be curious to know, like, I would assume, right, it'd be the same,
Yeah,
right? We'd find similarities, and we'd be like, "Holy shit."
yeah,
I connected with somebody from Thailand or
yeah,
Qatar, you know what I mean?
yeah,
Like, because there is a truth behind it,
yeah.
right? Like, our I you spoke on, like, one of the hardest things you heard is, "You're not the knower of everything," right?
Mhm.
One of the hardest things that I heard was, "Dude, you're not unique." Like,
Oh, I hate that.
"You're
I've been
not
told
you're
that
not
too.
special." You know what I mean? Like, as much as you wanna be and as
Mhm,
much as you think, like, your story is unique in your own world, like,
mhm.
you're not.
Yeah,
Like, you're
dude,
gonna
that was like a knife to the
oh, yeah,
stomach. Oh, yeah.
especially early recovery, right? The
Yeah,
ego's still there. You're like, "Dude, I don't need this," all that stuff,
yeah.
and somebody come up to you and you're like, "Yeah, bro, you're not unique." It's like, "Oh, shit."
Thanks for that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, no, I gotta say, it's been fantastic. I'm really glad you decided that you wanted to do this, and I think this is the start of something really special.
I agree.
Um, I really look forward to not only seeing where you go, but where the changes you can make and what's going on around here. Especially in Oregon, but also other states and counties and cities around the world where there may not be the support that we
Mhm.
need. Um, and yeah, I'm really thankful. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day, out of your Sunday to come and film this and
Yeah.
be a part of something that I'm trying to build, but also I can't do it without people like you. I can't do it without people like them. I can't do it without um, the support
Mhm.
that comes from doing this kind of thing. So
Yeah.
I really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure, Like I said at the beginning of all this, we met over 3 years ago, and it was
Hmm.
crazy because when we both left treatment, and I got into Oxford and you were struggling a little bit, you used to call me, do you remember that? When we would have our late night talks, and I used to stay on the phone with you for hours because you were struggling so bad,
Hmm.
and I remember the day that you told me you were going back to treatment, I was so fucking proud of you, like, so proud of you, and now look at this, like, it is
Yeah.
my honor to be a part of this because this is amazing, and you
Yeah.
did that, like, you overcame a lot of different things to start this and to spread this word. So I just thank you so much for allowing me to be a part of it. But I'm so, so, so proud of you.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
Of course.
All right. Well, I think that's a wrap.
Yeah.